And hello, everyone, and welcome to an emergency episode of Rich Sports Talk, the NFL, with a seismic shift here today. And we thought that the Aaron Rodgers story was going to be the headline. And I kind of wonder if Aaron Rodgers is actually pissed about this because he was going to be the headline today. 4-year extension, $200 million, staying in Green Bay, getting what he deserved. And just a mere couple of hours later, the NFL world was flipped upside down. Adam Schefter just reporting. Now, we don't know the terms of the deal, but Russell Wilson is heading to the Denver Broncos to become their quarterback. And apparently, Drew Lock is a part of the deal. Wow, so much to get into on this deal. And man, like, as a Jet fan, I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of smiling ear to ear because all I kept hearing from Jamal Adams when he left the Jets, just ripping them, saying, I didn't want to stay here in a rebuilding effort. I'm going to a contender." And 2 years later, yeah, Jamal, your quarterbacks are going to be Geno Smith or Drew Lock in the division with the defending Super Bowl champions, Kyler Murray, and oh, by the way, a young Trey Lance and a really good 49er team. Good luck. And I was on the fence saying there was no way Russell Wilson will do this. And Nick Chaplin, holy shazam, Denver Broncos, I can't believe it. I kind of can because desperation makes you do crazy things. You look at that division with Derek Carr, Patrick Mahomes, they needed to do something, and Justin Herbert. I mean, the Denver Broncos basically said, we have to deal with Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes for the next 10 years. We're not getting that guy in the draft. We need to make a deal. And I said this way back at the trade deadline that one of the deals that no one talked about really for the Broncos was the Von Miller deal in terms of, oh, they're just trading Miller for draft picks. I said, this is something to keep an eye on because it's a second and a third round pick. They're going to use that to go and get a quarterback, whether it was Deshaun Watson. And speaking of Deshaun Watson, when the terms of this deal come out, you don't think the Texans are grinning a little bit? I know that Deshaun Watson's going to have the legal issues, but all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers isn't going anywhere. Russell Wilson's been moved. Jimmy Garoppolo and Deshaun Watson are really the two biggest dominoes left for the quarterbacks this offseason to fall. Who's going to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo? And look at the teams that want a quarterback. Washington, Carolina, Pittsburgh. There isn't enough to go around. And don't be surprised. You've heard the rumblings out of Philadelphia because they have 3 first-round picks. They'd go on Deshaun Watson. They're also probably thinking to themselves, we can go in on Watson because not only can we get Watson, but we have 2 quarterbacks that probably could start for other teams in the league with Jalen Hurts and Gardner Minshew. I've been saying Gardner Minshew should be a starter in this league. So Philadelphia's like, we could probably break the bank and still get some nice recoup for the quarterbacks we already have. But man, if you're Seattle, this has to be absolutely deflating. And don't blame Russell Wilson. I know that the first thing Seahawks fans are going to want to do is blame the quarterback. Blame Russell Wilson. He wanted to get out there. He didn't want to stay there, but look what he had to deal with. I mean, Pete Carroll and that front office, the last 10 years, outside of the Jets, there might have not been a worse drafting team over the last 5 to 7 years, than the Seahawks. I mean, they have never given him an offensive line. And yes, they've given him DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and good receivers, but the defense, which is supposed to be Seattle's baby, Pete Carroll, defensive coach, hasn't been good since, the Legion of Boom left, and they haven't been able to replace them. But, oh, well, wait a minute. The Seattle Seahawks, they're still a good team. Yeah, but look at the division. You have probably one of the best coaches in football in Sean McVay now winning a Super Bowl. Kyler Murray looks like he's a legit player, and the 49ers are basically 10 wins every season as long as they can stay remotely healthy. I mean, you can take that pretty much to the bank. But I do wonder in Seattle if there's going to be a mass exodus because DK Metcalf wanted to get paid, but now all of a sudden does he hit the market as a receiver because he doesn't want to be there anymore? Now all of a sudden does Jamal Adams get moved because he signed a $70 million extension? And really, the Seahawks could use a quarterback with that first round pick this year. Oh, wait a minute. It's the Jets have that 10th pick this year. So it's going to be a haul, but Drew Lock, the starting quarterback I would prefer Geno Smith over freaking Drew Lock at this point, but this trade is seismic and it does impact the Jets because all of a sudden the AFC is a lot harder. And if you're the Jets, you almost have to feel even more aggressive to try to get that number one receiver because Calvin Ridley now off the market. Because you also need to figure out by the end of this year if Zach Wilson's the answer. Because if he's not the answer, you need to find another quarterback. Because you look at the AFC, the NFC, you can get to a Super Bowl, you can get to the playoffs with a good quarterback. The AFC right now, think about this, the quarterbacks under 27 right now. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not even mentioning now Russell Wilson. I know Tom Brady's gone, but he was in the NFC. My fault on that one. But you just look around the league, and even Tennessee was a really good team and has Ryan Tannehill. And I love their argument saying, well, we love Tannehill. You look at the Titans right now, you're like, they're not going to win anything with Ryan Tannehill. You feel like you need a stud quarterback right now. And if Wilson pans out and pops and is a great quarterback, the Jets are fine. But if you're the Jets, this puts a lot of pressure on Joe Douglas because now he has to go and get weapons and make sure Zach Wilson looks good, or at the very least, the next quarterback has weapons. And I still believe in Zach Wilson. I believe he has a lot of talent, but it did get a lot harder in the AFC. Let's be honest. And I mean, the good silver lining is it doesn't look like Deshaun Watson's coming to the AFC East. That's the good news. Give me one quarterback. Like, I'd rather deal with one great quarterback in my division than looking at the freaking AFC West now. Think about it. Derek Carr, you can make the case, is the fourth best quarterback in that division. And if you put him in any other division in football, he'd either be the best quarterback or the second best quarterback. I mean, it's just insane what has happened. Lots of comments coming in. Seahawks in total rebuild. I absolutely agree. I'm curious to see what they have. I keep checking on Twitter to see if Schefter has updated anything, but this is a Schefter bomb. And my first comment I said too was like, I wonder if Aaron Rodgers is ticked off about this because this was Aaron Rodgers' day. He just was the highest paid player in the NFL, staying in Green Bay for 4 years. He's staying home. But you look at part of the deal, more news from Schefter, more compensation for Seattle. Seahawks get talented defensive lineman Shelby Harris, who Denver considers a locker room mate, along with Drew Lock and multiple picks. But let's be honest, for Seattle, this is a gut punch. This is just brutal because this is of your own making. Because Russell Wilson has hinted for years now that just give him help, give him offensive line help. And the organization hasn't done that. Look at the division around him. Look at the Rams, who every year go completely in trading draft picks, going for it all, being aggressive. You look at the Cardinals, really good drafting, shrewd in free agency. You look at the 49ers, incredibly great drafting the last 4 or 5 years, have developed players incredibly. Outside of getting receivers, what's Seattle been good at getting? And don't forget, their biggest move of the last 2 years was trading for a box safety and giving up 3 picks and a starting caliber safety. So you look right now, it's going to get ugly in Seattle. And I was saying this for weeks, and I actually believed this for a while, but it shows me how ingrained Pete Carroll is in the Seahawks organization. If you're a Seahawks fan, that's got to be terrifying because I like Pete a lot. But Pete, it looks like the game is starting to pass him by a little bit. He's not adjusting. He's not being innovative. They keep not pushing the envelope on how to develop an offensive team. And you really look and you look at how fast the league is caught up and you look at how good his division is. I mean, do we forget that they had a losing record before Russell Wilson? I mean, they made the playoffs as a 7-9 team. That was the only time Pete Carroll made the postseason. Pete Carroll, without Russell Wilson, has failed in the NFL twice. With Russell Wilson, people could make the case he's a borderline Hall of Fame coach, but it's all about the quarterback. So let's see. As a Jets fans, I'm happy about this. You're right, Nolan. It's still mind-blowing. Broncos are going to be much better. They have great receivers and a great defense. They will compete. Like, think about that. Like, for Russell Wilson, yeah, he loses Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, but he's got a very good young receiving core. Probably the best tight end he's ever had in Noah Fant. A good offensive line, and they have a good running game. That Bronco offense, it's going to be fun. That team, like, think about all the AFC West games, like, and how teams are going to be fighting over those games. Think about all those AFC matchups: Carr, Wilson, Mahomes, Herbert. Those are going to be 16 games that every network is going to fight tooth and nail for to get on TV. Instead of giving up a 10th pick for Metcalf, hear me out. Kittle for the 10th. If you could get Kittle for the 10th pick in the draft, I would do that. I don't think that's going to happen, though. Who's Seattle's QB? Well, Drew Lock's a part of the deal. Geno Smith is still there. And Seattle, you assume it hasn't come out. I keep refreshing Schefter's Twitter page to see if anything comes out. I mean, this is going to be multiple first-round picks, but I would be shocked if it's not the 9th pick in the draft. So the question also now becomes, because Seattle now has all these picks, do they love Malik Willis? Or is there a guy in this draft that they really love? Or somehow I don't think they're going to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think San Francisco would do that. Or are they going to somehow try to package picks to get Deshaun Watson? I have no idea what Seattle's doing. I have no more. And Solomon Jets, any more trades by the end of the day? Who freaking knows at this point? I think about the last 48 hours in the NFL. We had a player suspended for the year for gambling. Aaron Rodgers just got paid the most money in history and on a yearly basis. And now Russell Wilson was traded. I mean, God, you got to love the NFL. Like, you want to know why the MLB is dying in this country? You want to look at why every other sports league, like, this is prime offseason and the NFL is dominant. It's March and we're still talking about the NFL. My jaw dropped seeing this notification. Yeah, like, everyone's like, the first reaction was, okay, who's Wilson going to? And the second is like, I don't care if they gave up their entire draft. I don't care if they did a Ricky Williams deal. I don't care if they got 5 first-round picks out of this. This is a losing effort for Seattle. You have never gotten a quarterback like Russell Wilson. Look at the franchise before Russell Wilson. The best success they had was with Matt Hasselbeck, when you had a great head coach, and Sean Alexander in their prime. That was for a short span. Russell Wilson has made Seattle, they've made the Seahawks a really noteworthy franchise. They were Seattle's number 1 team. For years, it used to be the Sonics. Now it's the Seahawks. You look at what Russell Wilson did for that team and basically carried that team with below average offensive lines. After Marshawn Lynch retired, below average running backs. Then before DK Metcalf, subpar receivers. And he just carried the load. And now this is going to be the best offensive line he's had. This is going to be the best running back he's had since Marshawn Lynch. And top end receiver talent, not as good as Seattle, but in terms of depth and tight end, I mean, it's going to be fun in Denver. Let's be honest. Broncos can't draft QBs, but they sure can pay for good ones. And say what you want about Broncos fans, but like in their front office, but you can't tell me every Bronco fan isn't doing backflips today. Like, they say, we don't mind the last 10 years of god awful drafting if it led to this. So, Giant Opinion Sports, I think Wilson over the hill, but the roster is at least good enough to win. But Russell Wilson is, for me, he's like Tom Brady in the sense, like, you look at quarterbacks taking care of themselves. Those two really do a great job of taking care of their bodies. And I do believe Wilson's game is going to evolve as he does get older. You're going to see less running from him. But I would not be shocked if he's a quarterback that's still playing at high level by the time he gets to 4 years old. And you look, it's amazing that he hasn't got more considerations for MVP. I mean, every year it feels like he's a top 5 in passer and touchdowns. And you look at the teams he's working with and you look at the division he's in, it just makes it even more amazing. And you wonder if now, because Denver is a little bit more of a bigger fan base, a little bit more of a bigger national presence than Seattle, if that does help elevate his brand a little bit more. And it is kind of funny too, because you felt like they tried to go a big market for Sierra, his wife, but in Denver, you know, not too bad. Oh shit, do the Jets play the Broncos this season? That's a great question. I actually think they do, unfortunately. Let me pull that up for you really quickly. Sorry guys, just pulling up the Jets schedule really quickly. Let's see. Here we go. The opponents for 2022. New England, Miami, Baltimore, Cincy. Oh, so Cincy's not great. It's in the Jacksonville road. Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, Browns, Steelers, Packers, Vikings. Yep, they're going to the Broncos again. But the good news is even though they have to go to Denver, they now still get Seattle as well on their schedule. So you're going to play Russell Wilson one way or the other, apparently, and it does look a little bit better for that Seattle game. I'm thinking right now, but yeah, I also do wonder if Jamal Adams is going to be requesting a trade by the end of the day because he didn't want to play for a rebuilding team, and 2 years later he's back on a rebuilding team. Does this reinforce the idea that the Jets need to put extra assets in the defense? This is the most stacked the AFC's been. I almost would go the opposite, KD, because you need to find out this year if Zach Wilson's the answer. The defense is going to get help, but I do believe that that this coaching staff can coach up the defense. And you saw what the Bengals did. I mean, the Bengals, they were smart in free agency. Yes, they got the big pass rusher in Henderson, but a lot of those guys were day 2, day 3 free agents. They were just good signings that didn't kill their cap space. If anything, this just makes you want to say that they're going to have to go harder on the offensive side because they need to figure out if Zach Wilson can hang with these guys. Because if you're at the end of the season like, okay, Zach Wilson looks like a legit quarterback, you feel great. But if you get to the situation at the end of year 2, you're kind of going, I don't know. But it's going to be very interesting with the Jets. I mean, their schedule's a lot harder this year, but you also look, there's a lot of teams that have either new head coaches or new quarterbacks, and that might help. I'm really interested to see what's going on with Seattle. I have a feeling that they have a guy in mind, probably not through the trade market, but they probably have a guy in mind within this draft. And I do wonder if it's going to be Malik Willis, because let's not forget, if they get the 9th pick, which the Broncos have, which I don't see how they're not getting the 9th pick in this draft, but they get the 9th pick and they get an inkling that, hey, Giants might want Malik Willis or the quarterback we want. I wouldn't be shocked. Then you see Seattle trading up in the draft to get a Malik Willis. Because the timing of this is also very interesting. They said they've been working on this for a while, but I am curious to see, like, Malik Willis does really well at the combine, looks really good. And, you're kind of like, okay, like, does this give them enough leeway, or did they find a guy? Maybe they like Desmond Ritter. Is there a quarterback in this draft that they're like, he's good enough, we can go find him, we can go get him? And I'm just actually trying to find out, I'm trying to find out who the Seattle Seahawks, if they visited with a quarterback during this combine, because I would be very interested to see if they did meet with it. I'm just checking right now online really quick. Running back, O-line, Traylon Burks, Kate Otten. Yeah, it's funny. They didn't, according to this, I don't see anything that they met with anyone specifically at the combine in terms of the quarterback position, but you can't rule out getting a quarterback right now. I think Denver was sitting on Rodgers, and when he signed, they pounced on Wilson. I do think that also played a huge part in this. Is when the news broke that Rodgers was off the board. I do believe Seattle's like, okay, but I do believe that part of the reason that they did, I agree with you, Giant Opinion Sports, that when the news came out that Rodgers was staying in Green Bay, this forced their hand because Denver's like, okay, we got to go in now because we don't want any other team coming in. And this is kind of interesting too, because it shows that Seattle, they've kept saying, oh, we don't want to trade. We don't want to trade Wilson. We don't want to trade Wilson. Yeah. Well, Motivate T, go check out my Twitter, Rich Sports Talk. I think you will like the Jamal Adams tweet I just put out there. I think Denver, but that was the thing. Like, think about Denver's other options. Draft a quarterback this year. Not a great quarterback class. Okay, Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay, Deshaun Watson. Not sure about his legal situation. I mean, Wilson was it. And I am expecting something really kind of like a stupid offer. And it's going to be funny, though, because you're seeing a couple players already involved in this. Here's the trade package. Seattle gets, so Seattle will not have, so he won't have Noah Fant. So, wow. I actually feel like Seattle got fleeced. According to Adam Schefter, this is official now. Seattle gets Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th. Denver gets Russell Wilson and a 4th. So basically, a good young tight end, Drew Lock, Shelby. Maybe Seattle likes Drew Lock more than we do, but I don't see it. And 2 1s, 2 seconds, and a 5th. Now, I'm assuming it's the 9th pick this year, the first round next year. So now Seattle gets a first-round pick back. Geez, let's not forget too. So I understand it's 2 firsts and 2 seconds and a 5th, but Seattle, can we just now look back to Joe Douglas got 2 1s, a 3, and a safety for Jamal Adams, and I know that there's 2 good young players there in Shelby Harris and Noah Fant, but it almost feels like with this official deal now coming out, you can tell me in the chat, but I don't think that's that much. Denver still keeps their 3rd round picks. Yeah, like that's not much. We've seen bigger deals. Like Ricky Williams got more 20 years ago as a running back. Jesus. Oh yeah. Tiberius, bad deal. You're talking about a Hall of Fame quarterback. How often do you get a Hall of Fame Super Bowl winning quarterback in your city? Like, if I was to tell the Jets fans, even at this age, like if you could trade 3 first round picks, 2 second round picks for Russell Wilson, you'd do that. I mean, we were talking last year about Deshaun Watson getting 3 first round picks, 2 second round picks, and this was even before like his legal troubles. You look at, I think Russell Wilson's a better player than Deshaun Watson. And yeah, I know Noah Fant's a good young tight end. Yeah, I know Drew Lock. I don't think he's going to be a good quarterback, but maybe Seattle does. I know they got a good interior D lineman, but 2 1s, 2 2s. I mean, are we forgetting Robert Griffin III got 3 first round picks and he didn't play a snap? And damn, am I crazy here? Jared D. Gerlamo. I'm sorry, Jared, if I said your last name wrong. Well, who does Pittsburgh go now? Jimmy G. Carr. I don't think Carr's getting traded, especially now. There's no way the Raiders, it's going to be hard to compete with Derek Carr in that division. You go anywhere else, you're not going to have a shot. Garoppolo makes the most sense to me. It's funny because I really do believe he could get a first-round pick now just because of how the market is. I don't see the Steelers being on Deshaun just because of all the legal situations. Maybe they could be as a dark horse. I mean, does anyone want Mike White from the Jets? It's kind of like he's available for a trade. I do think one name to keep an eye on, and I've from my friends in the scouting industry, they've actually heard more buzz on Mitch Trubisky than any of the quarterbacks in this draft. And Carson Wentz is also another dark horse because we don't know what's happening in Indy. It does not look good. If he gets released, I think Indy would be foolish, but he could definitely be in play for the Steelers. And Trubisky to the Steelers, and Jared might hate this. And Jared, tell me what you think in the chat. Yeah, no Mitch or Carson, but Carson I think would be a headache. But with Mitch Trubisky for a year or two, like if you signed Mitch, you drafted a kid this year and tried to develop him for a year, see what you had. With your defense in Pittsburgh and with those weapons and Mitch, I do believe you could be a playoff team because your defense is that good. I don't trust Cleveland. I don't think they have the quarterback. I think they're a complete mess. The Ravens and the Bengals are going to be tough. Like, let's not get it twisted, but you have a great defense. Can Trubisky make enough plays to get you into a playoff or at least be a bridge? Can he be a bridge so you can get to next draft for a quarterback or be a bridge to develop like a Ritter in this class or develop someone later in this draft? Like maybe Kenny Pickett, you don't feel like they're ready to go this year, but maybe next year if you give them some seasoning. Yeah, Jared, like I'm hearing Philly too uh sorry, Sean Watson. I love the reaction. No, no, no. We don't want Mitch Car, but outside Jimmy Garoppolo, like what other options are there besides drafting a quarterback? Unless you want to trade for Mike White at the Jets. I mean, I'm almost curious too. Like, do the Giants now, like, if the Giants like Malik Willis, could you maybe get something decent for Daniel Jones just because of how thin the market is right now? Like, that's another thing to keep an eye on too. And the other quarterback that's going to be a huge piece that no one's talked about, especially with this news, is what happens to Jordan Love? He is there a team that takes a shot on Jordan Love? Like, do the Steelers, if they could get Jordan Love for a third round pick, do you take a flyer? If you're the Panthers, do you take a flyer? If you're Washington and you don't get the big fish, which it doesn't look like they're going to get, do you take a flyer on a young Jordan Love who's still 23 years old and cross your fingers and hope? At least the thing with Mitch Trubisky is you do have an idea of what he is and what he can do and that he can at least win some games in the NFL. We have no idea what Jordan Love can do. Seattle's front office does not recognize value at all. Yeah, if I'm the Jets, I'm making a call today. I don't think they'll ever do a deal with the Jets again after freaking Jamal Adams. But if I'm the Jets or if I'm a team in the league, hey, how much for DK Metcalf today? And hey, you don't want to pay him and you're rebuilding. Like, we'll give you some picks for him. So if I almost would do like, I almost feel like draft day with the Jets. Like, do you call the Seahawks back and offer them their 10th pick back for DK Metcalf? But oh wow. Our D is good with TJ Watt, no doubt. With Harris, speaking of QB, does Pittsburgh get Pickett or the kid from UNC? Well, Jared, I don't know if you're new to the channel, but I do have an official big board. I'm going to put that actually in the chat right now, and I'm going to have this updated. This was done before the combine. The 3-point is definitely coming. But I only have Malik Willis in my top 50. I really do not love this quarterback class. To be honest with you, there's a lot of questions with everyone. Corral, I don't love that he's under 200 pounds. I don't know if he can stand up to the punishment in the NFL. He's a really small kid. I mean, people were criticizing Zach Wilson for being a small kid, and Zach Wilson's like 6'2", 6'3", and 215 pounds. A lot of the guys in this draft are like 200 even. So, and you're not going to like this comparison, Jared, but my comp for the UNC kid, and it's scary because they actually look exactly the same, is Baker Mayfield. Like, they are pretty much identical, and you're going to get a better head case. You're going to get a better kid with a better head on his shoulders than Baker, but you've seen what Baker's done in Cleveland. Like, do you really want your version of Baker Mayfield with the UNC kid? I don't think you do. I almost would take Jordan Love at this point because you have to evaluate him against this draft class. If you, as a talent evaluator, believe that he would have been a top quarterback in this draft, like that's what the Jets did last year, comparing Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold. And you believe Jordan Love's better, you probably could get Jordan Love for you're not getting a high pick. Like if you offered a 4 and a late pick, maybe a 3, I wouldn't hate that. If the Giants draft Malik Willis, I'm gonna be pissed. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of that. I'm doing my next mock draft, and don't worry, Giant fans, I do not have Malik Willis going to the Giants. So don't want to hear that. Giants want the kid from Oregon. They love him, I hear. Oh, a lot of Jet fans don't want him to be there at 5. Let me tell you something, Jared. So I know there's a lot of talk about Thibodeau, but I don't see him getting out there. By the way, all of your shows you've done old and new into my group on Facebook, fans for help the good work. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Did you feel yeah, so thank you, Jared, for the appreciation. Really love that. But it was just crazy. Like when I saw the news, and now I've seen the official deal. And if there's Seahawk fans in this chat, let me know how you feel, but I feel they got fleeced. Like I just feel like they got fleeced. Like it's just crazy. Like, and if fans want to blame Russell Wilson, look what his front office got for him. Just look at what the front office got for him, and think, you know, maybe Russell wasn't wrong for wanting to get out. Maybe Russell had a good reason for getting out of there, because it's just crazy. But I'm just reading Adam Schefter really quick. Obviously this is the biggest quarterback. And look, Seattle, the last time, like, never forget this, the last time that the Broncos took a swing like this, they won a Super Bowl. That was getting Peyton Manning. So they've taken big swings in the past, and it's worked. And I also wonder too, because there was a cryptic message kind of from Von Miller the other day, basically asking if he should wear 58 or 40 with the Broncos again, hinting he might want to come back. And I was like, I wonder why. I think he knew something from within the organization that this was happening. According to Schefter, Denver acquiring Wilson has nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers' decision to return to Green Bay. Denver general manager George Patton initiated trade talks with Seattle at least 2 weeks ago, but in recent days, trade talks have heated up. He was the Broncos' plan A. Seahawks were client listening to offers and got calls from multiple teams. One league source estimated to be over a dozen teams. I know Wilson's 33. I still think he's got at least 5 or 6 prime years left. And look, Denver, Eric Davis, for those who are just joining us, I'm going to I'll put in the chat what the official trade package is, but basically it's 2 1s, 2 2s, a 5th, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant, Drew Lock, and Broncos get Russell Wilson and a 4th round pick. So give me 1 second. I'm going to put that in the chat. It is Geno time. So that's according from Adam Schefter. That's in the chat, the official trade. And like I just put on my Twitter at Rich Sports Talk, I think Seattle got fleeced. I think they got absolutely fleeced. Who's the bastard that took 1.0? Seattle leads the NFL in bad trades this last year. From the last 2 years. Just think about that too. Like if I'm those other teams, I'm kind of almost kicking myself, because it's like, what did the other teams offer? So according to Schefter, like 12 teams were in. Like if I was the Eagles, like, and they said, I would have been like, I'll give you all 3 first round picks this year. I'll throw in a 3 this year, a 2 next year, and I'll throw in 1 or 2 good young players. Hell, I would have thrown in like even the good Devontae Smith kid they just drafted. Like, I would have done anything to get Russell Wilson in the NFC East. If you put Russell Wilson on the Eagles, I feel like they're probably one of the better teams and could win that division every year. So I'm just looking around. I'm going, Even the Giants, I'm kind of like, I didn't think it would work because of the cap situation. But even at that price, I'm kind of going with the Giants. Like, if could the Giants offer 5-7 this year, like, and say, look, we won't give you a first round pick next year, but we'll give you 5-7 this year, a 3, we'll give you a 2, and like, I'm kind of surprised I didn't think it'd be a good fit for the Giants, but just looking at what the Denver gave up, and I know Noah Fant's a good ascending young tight end, and I was kind of surprised that he was a part of the trade because I thought that was one of the selling points for Russell going to Denver was to have a good tight end. But I think Seattle did good. As the Giants fans, I know about holding on to a win now QB when the team needs to rebuild. But like the thing with Seattle though is, can they really afford to? This is the thing that's driving me nuts with Seattle. If you're going to rebuild, start completely fresh. Fire Pete Carroll. Just completely start from scratch, because I just feel like that whole program needs a complete reboot. And just sitting here, it's like watching. I'm just like, I was just amazed that. See, I know Seattle did good, but still, like, really think about it. They basically got the same pick they traded for Jamal Adams. They got the 9th pick in the draft this year and an additional first rounder next year. And 2-2s. Like, I get that they got a lot of good picks, but man, rebuilding is going to be freaking hard. And when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback that's still got good years left, I mean, I think Russell Wilson's going to be good for another 4 or 5 years at the peak of his game. You have to do everything to maximize that talent. And part of the reason that they were in this rebuilding mode was because of Seattle themselves. It's because of, outside of DK Metcalf, what great player has the Seahawks drafted in 6 years? I've said this, like, the Jets coming into last season were the worst drafting team over the last 5 years. They had a great draft last year, and it puts them ahead of Seattle. But I'd say the number 2 worst team drafting over that span was Seattle. Drafting running backs way too early, not getting offensive linemen, not getting impactful defensive players. Like, never forget, when the Seahawks were great, it was because Pete Carroll left from USC. He knew the recruits for 4 or 5 years because he, was at USC. He'd been mapping recruits. He'd been recruiting against kids. Like, he knew like what the recruit trees was. Like, he had recruiting for like a good 4 to 6 years. So, sorry, he had like an insight on scouting. What happened when you got out of that window, when he wasn't in college and wasn't scouting those kids and wasn't recruiting those kids? Became a lot harder in Seattle. They couldn't find those gems in the later rounds. They couldn't find anyone. Then they gave Pete more power. And like, I agree. Giants, like, opinion sports, like, I get the idea of a rebuild, but why not clean house if you're going to go with a rebuild? Seattle's O-line bad. They're not drafting QB until they fix the offensive line. I get that to an extent, but you need a quarterback to play in the NFL. I guess they're going to go with Drew Lock because he had to be in this deal, apparently. So, yeah, everyone on Twitter, Damian Woody, am I wrong for feeling Seattle could have gotten more in this trade? Matt Miller, yeah, the same. Trade Sam Darnold to Seattle. God. Could you imagine if they did that? Oh, God. Damian Woody actually brings up a great point, and I did not think about this, but let's not forget what's something that's going on with Denver right now. They're up for sale. They're trying to get $4 billion for that franchise. The fact that they now have Russell Wilson, one of the faces of the NFL, as their quarterback and an elite quarterback for the next 4 to 5 years, where now the Broncos are going to, I guarantee you the Broncos are going to be on Sunday Night Football a lot. They're going to be on prime, like, basically all the AFC West games are going to be primetime games, it feels like, this year. They're going to be like the 4 o'clock, the Sunday night, the Monday night games, just because they'll be that freaking good. So is that a big part of this trade too? Is not only improve the football team, but now does the value of that franchise go up even more because they have Russell Wilson, because they have an answer at the quarterback position? And That was a great point from Damian Woody, and I have to give him a lot of credit because that was something I did not think about, but that also is probably a really big part of this whole trade. So, um, that is just absolutely crazy. And you also wonder too, is Seattle going to be in the market for a rookie quarterback? I don't know, but now they're at least within striking distance of drafting a kid in the first round, and they have ammo to go up. Again, guys, thank you for joining us. Chaz always open. Your reaction to the trade. Would love to hear your thoughts. Aaron Rodgers, too. Your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers, Calvin Ridley. I mean, it's been a crazy. I know. I kept thinking, Calvin Ridley. Unfortunately, I was working last night, so I didn't have time to do that. Aaron Rodgers today. I'm like, well, he's staying in Green Bay, but I'm like, I gotta get on for this. 5-7 in the same junky O line. I just want to build the team up first. Then you go get your quarterback. Russ needs a running game to cook. Ever since those two high, he's been neutralized. I agree. Fix the O line. Russell Wilson will also help with the bad offensive line too because of his mobility, and you could then still draft some guys in the later rounds. But you know, how often does a Hall of Fame quarterback with years left still have hit the market? So I don't completely agree with that market. I get where people are coming from though. Wilson versus Herbert and Wilson versus Mahomes in the AFC West primetime. Yeah. Think about like Eric, I said, like those 16 games, even the Raiders, like Carr versus Mahomes, Wilson versus Herbert. I mean, all those games. I mean, how many times are those teams going to be on Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, the 4 o'clock window? But now the other thing too is with Seattle is if they're in such a rebuild mode, what happens now? Is DK Metcalf, Bobby Wagner, and Jamal Adams available? I do think you can get a good haul for Wagner, Metcalf, Jamal with the contract probably will be difficult. But if you're completely rebuilding, go full rebuild. Like, and this also tells me something too, that Seattle is fully invested in Pete Carroll. Because if they had any doubt, they wouldn't have done this. Because I guarantee you, Pete Carroll they wouldn't have made the trade if Pete Carroll thought his job was in jeopardy in the long term because they're rebuilding and they know they're going to be bad and probably be bad for a good 2 to 3 years because of their division, how good their division is. So for me, this tells Seahawks fans, if you were hoping Pete Carroll wasn't going to be in the organization long term, I don't think that's going to be the answer. And I'm interested to see who's the next domino to fall. Like, yeah, and if I'm Seattle, I repackage the extra first round pick next year for a vet QB. I wouldn't hate that either. But I am interested to see like who's the next domino to fall. Is it Bobby Wagner? Is it DK? Now DK might be kept because he's young. They could pay him a lot of money now. And also they need a face of their franchise. But it also depends on DK. DK might go. I wonder how those agents are today for DK, Jamal, and Bobby Wagner. Are they calling Seattle right now going, get us out of here? We don't want to be a part of this building effort. And it'll be interesting because Bobby Wagner will have a market. DK could get you first round pick. Like I said, if I'm the Jets, I'd offer the 10th round pick and even an additional pick to go get DK Metcalf just because he's an elite number one. There would be teams lining up for DK Metcalf there and then to pay him. The Seahawks might not get as much because teams will then have to pay him. But with Calvin Ridley off the market, I do think that DK Metcalf all of a sudden becomes in play. Bobby Wagner traded to a team that's looking to win a Super Bowl. I'm really curious what happens to Jamal Adams now because Seattle's really not only did they kill themselves with the draft, but now that contract, I mean, Jamal had injury problems again, 0 sacks last year, struggled at times, was out at the end of the season again. Now he has 3 years being the highest paid safety. Does a team trade for him? Does it like you're not going to get much because of the contract, but I would wonder if a team is interested, who would trade for him? But it's clear Seattle's going for it. And for Denver, you could say Denver's going for it, but in some regards, they're just staying competitive in their own division just because I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs has now been to 4 straight AFC Championship games. The Justin Herbert looks like the next transcendent player in our league. Then you look at Derek Carr, who, if you put him, and I said this before, and I think about it, you put Derek Carr in any other division in the NFL, he's either the number one quarterback or the number two quarterback. In the AFC West now, he's probably the fourth quarterback. Um, I mean, we are talking about potentially 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I mean, you can make it depends on what Derek Carr does in his career, but with Wilson, Herbert potentially, and Mahomes, 3 potential Hall of Fame quarterbacks in the same division. I mean, it's just insane. And it's almost like Denver had to make this move just to stay competitive. I mean, Denver could made this move, could be great next year, could be one of the best teams in the AFC. And because of their division, they could be the third best team in that division and be the 6th seed in the wild card, which is crazy when you really think about it. It really is. So, I mean, there's just so much to get into with this, but I would love to hear from you guys in the chat what you guys think about this trade, your thoughts, your reaction. But my reaction is like this was just my jaw hit the floor, like if I'm honest. So I mean, this is just a crazy day, and this is why the NFL's king, and this is why the NFL has also been great the last 2 or 3 years, is because if you had a great quarterback, they never moved. Now all of a sudden, we're seeing a lot of quarterback mobility in the last couple of years, or the prospects of quarterback mobility, and it's not done. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo's still out there. Deshaun Watson's probably going to get moved in. Maybe there's a quarterback out there that a team likes and wants to trade for. Like I said, I would not be shocked if somehow the Eagles pull off a trade to get, let's say, Watson, that they trade Jalen Hurts and Gardner Minshew to a team that needs a quarterback. So there's a lot of options out there to keep an eye on, and maybe that's something Pittsburgh does. If Watson goes to the Eagles, maybe they trade with the Eagles to get Jalen Hurts to be their quarterback, or Gardner Minshew, or at least a bridge quarterback for a season. But it is official, though. According to Adam Schefter about an hour ago, and now we have the details of the deal, that Russell Wilson is indeed going to the Denver Broncos. Seattle's in a full rebuild mode, especially in that division. It tells me, too, that they're staying with Pete Carroll for at least the next 2 or 3 seasons. They have no plans to move off of him. But the other big thing now you wonder with Seattle is what dominoes next to fall, because if they're rebuilding, do they move on from DK, Bobby Wagner, and Jamal Adams? Like those, that's going to now be speculation for the next couple weeks, especially for the draft. Like, does Seattle try to go out there? Maybe Seattle made the decision. This isn't the best draft, but this is a good depth draft. And if we can get as many picks as possible, we can at least start a solid foundation going forward. And their draft history hasn't been great, let's be honest, but that's their plan. I believe they're going to rue the day that they made this trade. You don't just trade Hall of Fame quarterbacks when they're in their prime. And I don't believe, like, you could have traded 6 first-round picks for Russell Wilson. And if the Denver Broncos are now relevant for the next 4 or 5 years, even if they don't win a Super Bowl, but they're in the playoffs every single year, they have a chance to win a Super Bowl for the next 5 or 6 years. That makes them more valuable because they're seen on television. It expands their fan base. It puts them in more primetime games. It gives them a chance to also bring in better players. I mean, players want to play with Russell Wilson. Now do they get Von Miller back in Denver? I mean, there's so much that this does to the NFL. And it also raises the stakes in the entire AFC. Like, now the pressure's on to make sure you not only get a good quarterback, but great quarterback. Because if you don't have a good or great quarterback, you feel like you're not going to be able to compete with these guys. So the NFL landscape has dramatically changed in the course of a day. Aaron Rodgers, of course, staying in Green Bay, but Russell Wilson moving to Denver. I mean, this is one of the biggest trades in my lifetime in the NFL. I've been saying for weeks, and I will say I was wrong. Like, I did not believe Russell Wilson would be moved. I kept saying if anybody's going to get moved, it's going to be Pete Carroll, because Seattle needs to recognize that this is the greatest player in their franchise's history. This is a player that could win them another Super Bowl, and this is a player that has a lot of years left. And I understand the idea of rebuilding, but think about Seattle. You were a franchise that was founded in the 70s. And you've had good quarterbacks in your history. Let's not get it wrong. But how long did you wait to get a quarterback like that? Pretty much your whole length of your franchise. Yeah, Matt Hasselbeck was good. He won you a lot of playoff games in that era in the 2000s. Yeah, you had some good quarterbacks in the 80s, but you didn't have one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL like when you had with Russell Wilson. You didn't have a guy that you felt could win you the Super Bowl, or every year you had a shot to not only make the playoffs, but be in the Super Bowl because of that quarterback. That was because of Russell Wilson. And this is Seattle's fault. Their mismanagement, their poor drafts the last couple of years, their bad trades, their bad contracts led them to this. And Seattle's going to say, oh, we're rebuilding. We have to rebuild. Well, this was a self-inflicted rebuild, because if Seattle did this right and they drafted right, there's no question they could have been a great team, and they could have continued to be great. Katie, how likely Matt Ryan getting traded? I haven't heard much on the situation with the Falcons. Great question, KD. I don't think it's going to happen, because think about this. Who's the best quarterback in the NFC South right now? And I know Falcons receivers are terrible next year without Ridley. I know they're in cap hell, but you look at the Falcons, they could easily win that division. Look at the quarterbacks. Carolina doesn't know what they're doing at quarterback, and right now their lead option is probably Sam Darnold. Well, what about Tampa? Tampa doesn't have Tom Brady anymore, and they're not in a good cap situation. Then you go to New Orleans, and Jameis Winston, if he comes back, is recovering from an ACL. And, Taysom Hill is a good gadget player, but probably not their long-term quarterback. You almost feel like Atlanta could win that division by default because of Matt Ryan. So, and if you were Atlanta, you would have to be blown away by an offer. And at this point in his career, Matt Ryan's a good quarterback. I don't see a team giving up a lot to get him at this point. But also, if you're Atlanta, you're looking at going, we kind of have the best quarterback by default, and he's going to be in the second year with this new offensive scheme. So I really don't see Matt Ryan going anywhere. I mean, but we've seen stranger things happen. There's also a quarterback that could get moved that we're not talking about right now. I mean, what happens with Carson Wentz? Mitchell Trubisky has to move. We have Jimmy Garoppolo that has to move. So there's a lot of moving parts right now, and it's anyone's guess. But the Broncos went all in. They get their guy, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, if you were a fan of a fan base, like, let's say Miami, how upset are you today? Because you're seeing a team that's saying, you know what? We don't want our quarterback. We'll go all in. We'll go get our quarterback no matter what the price is. And you're sitting there in Miami today and you're like, well, got to go another year with Tua. And you're in the AFC, and even if Zach Wilson doesn't develop for the Jets, like, think if you're the Dolphins, like, yeah, we have a good team, but we have Josh Allen in our division. Look at the AFC West quarterbacks. We got Lamar in the AFC North. We got Joe Burrow in the AFC North. It's just loaded. And that's the other reason why I would be hesitant to move off Carson Wentz if I'm the Colts, because I know Trevor Lawrence probably is the most talent in that division, but the Jaguars are a mess. To me, Carson Wentz is still that best quarterback going into next year in that division. I still think he's a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. And I know that they were the number 1 seed in that division, but even with like Carson Wentz, it's like you feel like whoever wins the AFC South, it feels like they're bringing a pistol to a machine gun fight with some of these other quarterbacks in the AFC. So, but that's the big news today. Russell Wilson is officially with the Denver Broncos. Thank you so much for jumping on this live stream, this emergency one. Just wanted to get to the big news today. Really appreciate you guys as always jumping on. We'll have more content. We will have more live upstreams. I mean, live streams. I mean, we haven't even hit free agency. That's a geez. You cannot imagine like we haven't even got to the crazy part, which was supposed to be free agency. And we're here talking about a big trade, but we'll have more content. We'll break in live if there's big signs with the Jets or the Giants. Of course, if there's a huge move in the NFL, we will be back to give our reaction. So make sure you hit that subscribe. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for all our latest content. Love having you guys. Love interacting with you guys on the channel. You guys help make this possible. Thank you so much for joining us here today, guys. Looking forward to talking to you later this week, but just wanted to jump on and give you my reaction to this monumental day in the NFL. And again, Seattle, wonder if it's going to be sleepless in Seattle for a long, long time, moving on from Russell Wilson. And for Denver, let's put it this way. You have a shot. Denver took a shot a couple of years ago. They took a big swing on another great quarterback. And it led them to 2 Super Bowls and a Lombardi trophy. Now they're hoping history will repeat itself yet again. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Rich Sports Talk.